Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sarel van Grennen, aka Mr. VG, and I am back. I'm back with the next video, almost our last video on exam preparation. Today we are specifically going to have a look at exam preparation for paper 2. Now, paper 2 is usually for my students a question paper that gives them heart palpitations. They kind of go, "Oh, sir, I hate paper 2." Well, that's most probably because I'm also in a boys' school, and boys are not necessarily the most or the fondest of theory. The ladies that I've taught in my life so far, they rather more go towards the theory part because they love to study. They don't mind studying at all. Now, please, I'm not being sexistic and saying, you know what, it's for paper 1 is for boys and paper 2 is for girls. Not at all. Just having a bit of fun. But what I'm going to specifically have a look at today is I'm going to do 4 things. First of all, I am going to have a look at the different topics that are covered. Secondly, what is the different approach that you take for paper 2 instead of paper 1? Thirdly, I'm going to have a look at what can I look out for in every single chapter. Last but not least, I'm going to have a look at what approach am I going to use for conquering this monster of mathematics paper 2. So buckle up, get yourself ready, and let's start by looking at the different topics. First of all, there's going to be statistics, which is 20 marks. So there's those things about mean, mode, median. But don't forget about variance, don't forget about regression. We're going to look at those things that you mustn't forget a bit later on. Secondly, there's going to be analytical geometry or coordinate geometry. That will be about 40 marks in the exam. Next up is going to be trigonometry. Ooh, I love my trigonometry. That's about 40 more marks. And last and definitely not least, Euclidean geometry. That is 50 marks in the exam. So about a third of your paper is going to be Euclidean geometry. Now, what must I focus on when I prepare for the maths paper 2? First of all, I really have to focus on my theory. But it's not just rote learning. It's not just going, okay, you know what, theorem 1 says this, theorem 2 says this, theorem 3 says this, the formula says this. That's not what I'm talking about. Yes, that's part of what I'm talking about, but also you need to look at how do I apply that. For instance, if I'm talking about proving something a cyclic quad, I must think about how can I do that? What does the theory actually say? So kind of make it go from rote learning to jumping out of the page at you. Like, how can I apply this theory? Then my focus in paper 2 is scoring marks by doing the basics right. Scoring marks by, making sure that, I've got the right angle equal to the right angle, or making sure that I use the right formula. That's what this is a lot about in paper 2. So now for the next few minutes, I'm again going to talk about the 3 different bands. The guys first getting below 40, those guys that's kind of in danger of failing the matric exam. You guys really need to make sure you get your basics right. You need to make sure that I've scored my basics right. But I've got something that I would like you to make sure. In trig and analytical geometry specifically, there's a lot of marks you can score by doing basics right. In other words, in trigonometry, you make sure that your reduction is done right. So first of all, you get your angles between 0 and 360. Then you get your angles between 0 and 90. Make sure you get those 100% correct. Even if you don't know how to finish off the sum, you do that. Being able to change tan A in a prove left equal right, improving identities. Change tan A into sine A over cos A. Change sine 2A into 2 sine A cos A. Those basics. In analytical geometry, make sure that you are able to do distance correct. Make sure that you are able to do gradients, perpendicular lines. Maybe a bit of collinearity needs to be thrown in there. Also, please make sure you get your completing the square right. In other words, writing a circle into the standard form that x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equal to r squared. Make sure you can do those basics right so that you get those marks, because those questions will be asked and they count a lot of marks. And also, you need to make sure those basics are right, because if you've got anything or any idea that you want to get like 4 or 5 or 6, you cannot think about that, getting those marks, without getting the basics right. Now, I'm not talking about 4, 5 or 6 for the whole paper. I'm talking about per question. Then, the guys that's below 40, make sure your statistics is perfect. Make sure that you know what standard deviation is. Make sure you know what regression is, how to get the line of best fit. What does R represent? What is the A, the B? Those things. Make sure you get them right. That's 20 marks. So that's about 13%. Now over to my 40 to 80 percenters. For you guys, it might seem as a very big number of you that's going to be between 40 and 80 percenters. But all of you, I encourage you to first of all do the following. Also make sure you do the basics right. But now you guys need to, ladies and gents, move a little bit further than just getting your basics right. You need to focus on strategies. In other words, what can I do to make those more difficult questions more manageable? Now, the way that you can do that is by also looking at previous year's exam papers and look for questions that repeat itself. Look for questions that is there every single year and look at the strategies we use to answer them. For instance, there's going to be a proving left equal right. There's going to be solving of trig equations. There's going to be a Pythagoras sum. With analytical geometry, there will be inclination angles. There will be, completing the square. There's going to be circles. There's going to be tangents. In those 2 chapters, you specifically look at those repetitive questions. You look at the questions that's every single year they are there, similar to what they are there, but always make sure that you can do that and get the basics right. Make sure that your reduction is done perfectly. Make sure that you don't make silly mistakes by subbing in incorrectly or by solving incorrectly. Those kind of mistakes we all tend to do. When I look now at also something that I said in the previous video that I want you to also always remember. Do not get stuck on question or level 4 type questions in the middle of your question paper. So those what the hell kind of questions. Man, leave them for later on. Leave them for when, you've got time left. But you've got to make sure that you get the difficult questions and the basic questions right. Now, I encourage you to again look at both GDE and IEB papers so that you kind of get a feel for how they ask a different, how do they How does the IEB ask it, the GDE papers? And also you're going to learn a lot because, they kind of have a different approach to it. But nothing prevents an examiner from taking an IEB style question and asking them in the GDE. Nothing prevents it. They can do whatever they want. Last but not least, I'm going to quickly move over to the guys that are getting, the guys and the girls, sorry, not just the guys and the girls that are getting 80% and above. Those guys where maths is your thing, or you work really, really hard to get that distinction. Not that I'm saying the rest don't work hard, just don't. I don't want to step on somebody's toes. But the guys that are getting and the girls that are getting 80% and above. Now for you, you have to, yes, make sure your basics are right. You have to practice your more difficult kind of questions, your level 3 questions. But also, you need to focus on strategies. Get a strategy for level 4. Get a strategy on how do I approach a level 4 type question with trigonometry, for instance. Like I've seen today, one of my students came and asked me a sigma notation inside of trigonometry. Might sound really strange or really weird, but I saw it. For you guys and gals, please get strategies. So for instance, how do I prove a cyclic quad? How do I get those geometry, especially the Euclidean geometry? Ask yourself constantly the question, how can I do that? So learn to deconstruct questions. Looking for the monkey, looking for the mountains. Also, when you practice, find 2 different approaches, maybe to answering the same questions, because my approach might not be the same as yours. Yours might not be the same as mine. But find different approaches and have these kind of discussions where you talk, where you say, but I see it this way, you see it that way. We might both be correct, but we have different approaches, and those different approaches help you in doing level 4 type questions. Next up in this video, I'm going to look at those 4 different topics. What must I look out for in every single one? Let's start at the easier one, which is statistics. Now in statistics, I've got to first of all look out for meaning. In other words, the meaning behind the different measures. So what does a standard deviation mean? What does a median, interquartile range? What are the advantages, the disadvantages? Those kind of little bitty things we kind of forget when we study. Also, I encourage you to look out for the different graphs, the different like box and whisker diagrams. I encourage you to look for those specific tools and when can I use them? When is it good? When is it bad? And also, what do they show me? When I'm talking about analytical geometry, please look out for trigonometry. In other words, trig inside analytical geometry. So if you've got a triangle, why can't I use trig? If there's a 90-degree triangle, I can look for SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tan is opposite over adjacent. Those kind of things, look out for them in analytical geometry. Look out for Pythagoras. Look out for him. When there's a 90-degree, say you've got a radius and a tangent, you can use Pythagoras. Also, look out for inclination angles. Oh, I love my inclination angles. I love them, but you've got to look out for them. Also, Pythagoras, I've said already. Completing the square. Completing the square is one of those things that come in here because nowhere else in mathematics am I forced to use completing the square except when I want to write a circle in standard form. I just want to quickly backtrack and just talk about inclination angles for a little bit. Whenever they ask me anything about the angle, the size of an angle between lines or somewhere in a triangle, my first thought in analytical geometry is inclination angles. So please remember that. Go and watch the videos on inclination angles that I've recorded. They are fantastic. They're great use. They're of great use for you as you prepare to just spark those memories again. Please go and watch those videos. With trigonometry, what you look out for is the different types of questions. There's going to be a Pythagoras type question where you've got to draw a triangle inside a specific quadrant. There's going to be writing in terms of, there's going to be proving left equal right. There's going to be solving a trig equation. There is going to be 2D or 3D trigonometry with your angles of elevation. Those kind of sums, there's going to be those. So you've got to learn strategies on how do I approach every single one of them. Little bit of extra. Now this I'm going to give to you for free. Be careful of undefined. If they ask me where is a specific identity undefined, 99+% of the time, two things you got to look out for. Number one, dividing by 0. So your quotient, your divisor, equal to 0, and then you solve that resultant equation. And look out for asymptotes of tan graphs. Over to geometry. What must I look out for in geometry? Exterior angles, both of triangles and of cyclic quads. A lot of my students forget about exterior angles. Please don't forget about them. Your reasons are crucial. Do not lose silly marks by having your reasons, the wording wrong, especially if you're writing a GDE paper. We are very, very strict on the marking. IEB, there's a bit more leniency, but still, I encourage you. You do not know how the examiner will necessarily mark. So please get your reasons right. Look out for using trigonometry inside geometry. So when you've got a triangle, well, I can ask sine, area, cosine rule, SOHCAHTOA. Same with Pythagoras. I can ask him, especially here. There will be some theorem and proofs, so please study them. It's 5 or 6, maybe more % of your paper, which is study work. Please score those marks. That can be a difference between a 65 and a 70, or a 75 and an 80. So please make sure you've got your theory down. Our last little thing we're going to look at is what is my strategy for the approach for this specific exam. For Maths Paper 2, first of all, you've got to summarize all your theory and the interpretations thereof. Then, look at your strategies based on your theory. For instance, if they ask me, prove a cyclic quad, I go back to my theory. But how can I do that? Or if they ask me, prove left equal right, get a strategy out of your theory. Look for questions that occur in multiple papers. Now, it's not that those questions will be there verbatim or word for word, but they'll be there in the same form. So they will be there, but just the numbers will be different, maybe asked in a different way, but the same types of questions occur year on year on year. We only have so many types of questions we can ask you, so you go and find them. Then again, practice, practice, practice. But practice only comes after you know your theory. Please, ladies and gents, do not practice without your theory. That's useless. I'm honest, it's useless. So please, first know your theory. and then go over to the practice. I'm going to finish off this video by just talking about one or two things. If you are feeling very lonely and you're struggling with regards to studying mathematics, please go and ask your friends for help. Get a bunch of friends together and do the summarizing of your theory. Do it together. And you study from each other's theory. Do not be afraid to ask. Do not be afraid to make mistakes in your preparation. But do not give up. Do not leave questions open. Attempt them. Write something down. Look, if an examiner sees a blank space, where can they give marks? But if you at least attempt the sum. I'm not saying spend 20 minutes in the middle trying to solve a 3-mark question. No. I'm talking about right at the end, and there's 1 or 2 questions that you don't know how to approach. Try it. You've got nothing to lose. No one's going to judge you. No one's going to laugh at you. Attempt something. And please, remember, you are worth more than the marks you get. You have a brilliant, amazing future ahead of you. Go and grab hold of it. Make sure you study hard so that when you're done writing this paper at the end, you can say, I'm done. I've given it all I've got. Now the rest is in the examiner's hands. Do not leave matric with regrets. Do not leave with, oh man, if I just gave a little bit more. Ladies and gents, you don't want to do that to yourself. This is Mr. VG signing out. It's been a fantastic journey with you all. Again, I encourage you, ask questions. Ask us if you're struggling. Ask your teachers. Ask your friends. But do not give up. Do not throw everything away in this last 4 months. You can do this. This is Mr. VG signing out. Go and be awesome. Cheers.